And
All right, so there are three types of
the
collisions.
first is the collision of the automobile with an object.
At reasonable speeds, up to 40, 50 miles per hour. So that's survivable. It's about 20 G.
And now a body, the pure model would be unrestrained, has a second collision with the inside of the automobile.
Hitting a dashboard is a bad idea, though it gives. 100th of a second is what I'm looking at, so that would be about 200 Gs.
And the third collision is the one where the injuries are truly caused, and that's the collision with the internal organs of the body, who then go forward and collide with the body wall.
All right, so broken bones, internal bleeding, and that sort of stuff.
That's where the injury often truly occurs. It's in that third collision. There are also issues of pure intrusion, like parts of the car going into them.
All right, if you see something like this flying towards you, duck down. Guys, don't worry about the acceleration. Just duck down. You don't want to lose your head.
Dr. Frederick Maillet happened to be driving by in the opposite direction. He stopped and ran to the scene.
He found the princess with her back to the door, leaning up against the back of the front right passenger seat, and her legs up, one leg up on the rear seat. Her sort of rear end down in the foot area, and her right leg was strapped under the seat. She is kind of contorted. She has her head down on her chest, and this is a position which makes it difficult to breathe.
Maillet saw at once that two of the passengers were dead, and he immediately began to administer first aid to the princess.
She had good color. She had actually looked to be in okay shape. And he said, quote, I thought this woman had a chance to survive. And of course, he didn't know about the internal injury that she had.
By this time, the paparazzi had surrounded the car, their cameras clicking away. 12:27 a.m., police and firemen arrived, alerted by cars exiting the tunnel ahead of the Mercedes. An ambulance soon followed, and paramedics helped to stabilize the princess. She was unconscious, and there was no way to determine the severity of her internal injuries. 1:15 a.m., the bodies of only Paul and Dodi Fayed were removed from the wreck. Diana and Reese Jones, barely alive, were finally extracted more than a half hour later. 2 a.m., the ambulance arrived at the hospital, with Diana clinging for life. There would later be a great deal of debate about the 90 minutes plus that elapsed between the time of the accident and Diana's arrival at the emergency room.
She was alive during all that time. Almost immediately upon arrival, she went into cardiac arrest. And really from that point, it was very little hope of reviving her. According to all the experts that we consulted on this question, she would have had a far better chance of survival if she'd been gotten quickly to the operating room.
Trevor Reese Jones was brought to the same hospital, where surgeons were successful in saving his life. Down the hall, another surgical team labored over Diana for almost 2 hours, but the massive chest injuries were beyond repair. 4 a.m., August 31st, 1997. Diana, Princess of Wales, was pronounced dead at the age of 36.
All right, so not wearing a seatbelt cost her life. All right, so with the seatbelt, your impact time is the same as a car, so it's survivable at reasonable speeds. All right, so it's about 22 Gs. Without the seatbelt, your impact time is much shorter, so the acceleration is going to be much larger.
6,000 miles away, Swedish engineers came up with the same answer. The three-point seatbelt was introduced by Volvo in 1959. Volvo patented the device, but allowed everyone else to use it free of charge.
All right, so pick out the best answer and put it on the side. Put it on the side. Yeah. 3 people. Okay, so I'm looking at the answer. So because the increase in impact time translates into smaller acceleration. Yeah, guys, larger the impact time is the smaller the acceleration is. Very good. B is the best answer for that one. So give yourselves 5 points for that. All right, the whole idea of the crumple zone is to increase the impact time.
Clunk the car door and click the seatbelt. Clunk, click every trip.
American drivers would prove harder to win over. In the late 60s, only 1 in 20 bothered to wear a seatbelt. Millions were spent trying to persuade them, to no avail.
What's the first thing that goes through your mind in the head-on if you're not wearing a safety belt?
The steering wheel. All in favor of wearing safety belts, raise your hand. You could learn a lot from a dummy. Buckle your safety belt.
All right, so a lot of people decide not to learn a lot from a dummy. It's kind of like the COVID pandemic right now. People don't want to wear masks. They don't wear masks, and people who didn't want to wear seatbelts, they didn't wear seatbelts.
Really, almost
For various reasons.
nobody I know wears seatbelts.
I find it inconvenient.
I don't see where you need them, really. You know, to drive carefully.
I don't like to feel so tied down.
Mostly they're a pain in the...
All right, a lot of people have a lot of reasons, and then so what happened, they passed laws requiring people to wear seatbelts. How well do they work then?
Welcome back to Headline News Tonight. The government is looking for ways to make our roads safer. 2002 was the deadliest year in a decade for drivers.
Nearly 43,000 people were killed in car accidents last year. A federal report says that in more than half of the deadly crashes, victims weren't wearing seatbelts. And the report finds alcohol played a role in more than 40% of the deaths. Officials say there may be a need for tougher state laws and better enforcement.
All right, so this is from 2002. About 40,000 people died that year because of traffic accidents, and half the people were not wearing seatbelts. So a couple of things to talk about. This is news from 18 years ago, guys. Numbers are about the same. About 40,000 people per year still die of car accidents. 40,000 still die of car accidents. And back then, nearly half the people were not wearing seatbelts. I get that. That's not, I don't have a problem with that. You're not wearing a seatbelt, you're taking a chance, you die from it, that's your life, that's your choice. The only thing that I have a problem is, why would you die if you're wearing a seatbelt? That's the one I have a problem with. All right, guys, life is not like Disney. As far as Disney is concerned, you do the right thing, things work out. Here, you're doing the right thing. You're still dying. I don't think it's fair. So the question is, why would you die if you're doing the right thing? You're wearing your seatbelt and you're still dying. Explain that.
You can get hit by a different car and it's going straight into your direction. Let's say you're going down a road and a car hits you on the side door that you're on.
Okay, I'm going to give you 5 points. Side impact collisions, seatbelts are not going to help you that much. Very good. What else?
Straight flying objects.
Flying objects, absolutely. I mean, if you're wearing a seatbelt, you're a target. Yeah, you got no place to go. If something coming towards you, you're stuck. What else? Give yourself 5 points. What else? What else can you guys think of?
There have been some cases where people were hit by items, not only like pieces of cars, but within the vehicle itself, and things not tied down go flying around and they'll hit you. So not only you be tied down, but your stuff.
Give yourself 5 points. That's it. That's a case in point. Let me tell you guys something. My brother is a businessman. Okay, he's got very little to no understanding of physics. So I mean, back when you were allowed to be a backseat passenger without a seatbelt, so he would be visiting from Connecticut and he would say, "Okay, I'm just gonna sit in the back. Don't worry about me, because I don't want to wear a seatbelt." I would say, "Well, if that's the case, I would say, just why don't you just go get a cap or something? Because I'm not gonna let you not wear a seatbelt in this car. Out of the question." And I would say, no, don't worry about me. I would say, no one really cares for you, man. It's you get into a car accident, what's going to happen? He's going to be flying all over the place. Potentially, he can kill me. That sort of stuff is very, very dangerous. At the time, I had a dog. I still have a dog. At the time, I had a different dog. When I say dog, it just feels like I'm lying because that's a beagle. Guys, beagles is like a compromise between a real dog and a stuffed animal. And it was about 20 pounds. Even he had his own seatbelt. The reason is because that thing flying around, it can hit you, and then he has enough of a force that can actually snap your neck. That sort of stuff is dangerous. 20 Gs, 30 Gs, 40 Gs, 50 Gs, that's large enough to actually snap your neck. So hence the reason why everything inside the vehicle, all the massive objects, like the living things or the heavy things, they need to be strapped down for your own safety. All right, so that's important. What else? The other thing that I'm going to say is speeding. Oh my God. I mean, you end up getting that 10th of a second impact on at 40 to 50 miles per hour. And where do you get it from? You get it from the crumple zone. You get it from the crumpling of the car. The car can only crumple so much. All right, I had one student, the older adult student, and she was probably in her 40s or 50s. And this is like 20 years ago. She said, "Ken, I would never, under any circumstances, would wear a seatbelt." I said, "Why not?" Because she had a relative, a niece, I think, and then the person ended up getting into a car accident. So the car ends up getting wrapped around a tree, and then the person got crushed to death. And when the firemen showed up, and one of the firemen said, if the person was not wearing a seatbelt, the person would have thrown out of the car. Okay, guys, don't count on it. There's no such thing. Don't count on it. Don't count on it. All right, so speedometer on my car, as far as the speedometer is concerned, I can go up to 140 miles per hour. Never tried it, but that's what the speedometer says. And let's assume that it's late at night, around midnight, you're feeling tipsy enough to try it, so you take the car out in the neighborhood and take it up to 120 miles per hour, and you lose control of the car. And then what happens? You smash into a building or a tree, you can't survive something. All right, there's no way. The car is going to crumple, it's going to wrap around the tree, it's going to get crunched. Forget that. Those unbelievably high speeds, you cannot survive something like that. So you can get killed while doing the right thing, while wearing a seatbelt. Yeah, it is possible. But obviously the seatbelts help. Look at Princess Diana's case, 4 people inside the car. It would have been a reasonable survivable impact. Yeah, 3 people dead, 1 person barely survived. So at reasonable speeds, improves your chances of survival.
In an area underneath the driver, so that what's read by the box is what.
So the next question is, now I ran a bunch of numbers. I said, 20 to 25 Gs for car companies is survivable. Princess Diana, noticed that she survived the initial impact. Her acceleration was probably around 200 Gs. And all of a sudden, the curious minds want to know, what is the maximum that you could be exposed to and still be able to survive under extreme constraints? What is it? Now, you cannot do these kind of experiments, but the accidents usually happen, especially with these race car drivers, and sometimes they do survive. So what they decided to do, they decided to place black boxes in these cars. And then if there was an accident, they would have the measured value for acceleration. And here's what they discovered in 1996.
Driver experiences.
Here's how it works. At the moment of the crash, the box records the direction of the impact force and, most importantly, the deceleration, or just how hard the car hit the wall. Researchers estimate that when Fittipaldi crashed, he felt nearly 100 Gs. That means for a fraction of a second, Fittipaldi had the weight of a dump truck pressing on his body.
All right, so that's not an estimate. That's a reading from a black box. They realized that this guy was exposed to about 100 Gs, and he did survive. So this was a big finding. So this happened in 1996, and ever since then, they're keeping track of that data. And then I used to follow it because I used to correspond with the impact physicists. Now I find that stuff on Wikipedia. All right, so the numbers are up to 146. It's about 140 Gs. So you can be exposed to it all the way up to 140 Gs. So between 100 to 140 Gs for a fraction of a second, and under extreme constraints, it can be survivable. Initial impact could be survivable. All right, you may still bleed to death and that sort of stuff, but the initial impact can be survivable. So 20 to 25 Gs up to a few seconds. So we know that to be correct from John Stepp experiment. We also know from these race car collisions, accidents, that you can survive between 100 to 140 Gs for a fraction of a second. And that's where the impact physics state remains right now.
World
All right, now let's move on to real life.
In shock, and they are mourning the death of Dale Earnhardt Sr. at the age of 49. The accident that claimed his life yesterday occurred, as you said, on the final lap of the Daytona 500, the biggest race in stock car racing. Earnhardt and his legendary number 3 black Chevy was packed in a crowd when he was suddenly clipped by another car, apparently lost control and hit a retaining wall at close to 200 miles an hour. This you see now is the view from a camera inside of Earnhardt's car at the time of that accident. He was taken afterward to a local hospital where doctors said he had no vital signs. He probably died instantly in that crash.
Okay, so when I saw that,
shock, and they are mourning the death.
I was rather surprised.
Dale Earnhardt Sr. stock car racing car apparently lost. Number 3 black Chevy was packed. Biggest race in stock occurred, as you said, on the final.
I was surprised that crash killed him.
Lap of the Daytona.
All right, so why was I surprised, and how did he die? All right, so both of them. I mean, the fact that he died was surprising, and the way he died is also really, really surprising.